Hello there, and welcome back to this quiet space beneath the stars. Before we begin, take a slow breath. Let your shoulders soften and allow the day to slip quietly away, like mist dissolving into the evening. Whether you're here in the hush of night or in the gentle calm of a soft morning, let the noise drift outward and let your mind rest in the stillness at the center. Imagine a horizon stretched wide and tender, where the darkness feels cool and velvety, folding gently, like waves upon a sleeping sea. Above a pale shimmer lingers starlight that breathes slowly dust, that drifts with patience, clouds that inhale and exhale in long quiet turns. This is the first whisper of the universe. Not a single instant, not a sudden spark, but a story flowing like a slow current through all of time, wide, unhurried, and calm. It is a tale of darkness, of light, and of the silence that cradles them both. What if the first voice of the universe was not a burst of fire, but a murmur softer than breath? And what if that murmur is still here, drifting around us like a secret folded into the quiet between stars? Where are you listening from right now? A dim room, a rainy evening, a warm corner before sleep, while we share this small moment under the same endless sky. If gentle journeys like this bring you ease, you're welcome to linger, to follow along. No hurry, just a seat beside the soft glow of the story. So let your thoughts fall into the rhythm of drifting light, and together we'll begin our quiet walk into the first whisper of the universe, moving through it like a tide that knows its way. It was as though the quiet words had drifted toward this point all along, and the flow of silence simply opened into another layer of stillness. The universe before form, before shape, before even the faintest gesture of creation, lay as a canvas untouched wide and unbroken, empty of line or color, waiting without urgency. It stretched in every direction, though direction itself was not yet real, and in that expanse there was only the softness of possibility, as though the very fabric of being had not yet chosen to weave. The image was not sharp, nor could it ever be sharp, for there was no outline, no border, no edge against which to measure. It was like the surface of night before stars appear, a field without pattern, waiting in endless stillness. This unmarked space was not heavy. It was not burdened with darkness, nor weighed down by silence. Instead, it floated in itself, a breath held across eternity, unbroken, undisturbed. The word void might be whispered here, but not as emptiness, not as absence, rather as the most delicate openness, the way a blank page waits without pressure, the way a sky before dawn rests in itself. It was not the hush of something missing, but the hush of something not yet begun, a silence alive in its patience. There was no sound to stir this fabric, no vibration to ripple across it, no echo to disturb its calm. Even the thought of sound had not yet come to pass, and so the silence was not only present, but complete, filling every possible distance with a single, continuous stillness. It was the kind of quiet that cannot be broken, for there was nothing yet to break it. The kind of quiet that spreads endlessly, the way still air spreads across a valley before the wind wakes. In this silence, time itself felt absent, as though each breath lingered without measure. There was no light to pierce it, no glimmer to mark the difference between here and there. It was not the darkness of shadow, for shadow belongs to something already formed. It was the darkness Before the idea of light existed a calm and even veil stretched everywhere, without beginning, without end. This darkness was not harsh, but tender, not frightening, but soft like velvet, drawn gently across the skin of thought. It invited no alarm, carried no edge, only the assurance of endless night that is neither cold nor warm, only infinite. Within that state of stillness, the absence of form was not an absence to resist, but a release to lean into. It was freedom from outline, freedom from weight, freedom from the need to move. The unshaped vastness became a cradle, an invisible sea without current, a surface that carried gently, without push or pull. In the quiet of this beginning, the lack of sound was a comfort, the lack of light was a balm, and the lack of structure was a kindness, for nothing was asked and nothing was demanded. The sensation of emptiness, rather than pressing inward, spread outward, dissolving any sense of tension, loosening what might otherwise have clung. It was a hollow that did not echo, but breathed like the still moment between heartbeats, like the calm at the center of a tide before it turns. To rest within that hollow was to recognize that the absence of detail is not frightening, but serene, that the unmarked field is not threatening, but soft, that what has no shape can still embrace gently. The universe in that earliest hush seemed to lean into itself unhurried, untouched, unformed. It carried nothing yet, but within its blankness lay the potential of all things quiet and weightless, like seeds hidden in soil, not yet stirred. It was not a silence to endure, but a silence to rest in, and the openness of it allowed even the thought of rest to dissolve into something more natural, more effortless. It was the stillness of waiting without need of presence, without sound of darkness, without fear. And so the first silence endured boundless yet tender, a field of nothing that was never empty, a canvas without paint, a horizon without line. It remained as the gentlest truth that before form, before sound, before light, there was only the endlessness of calm. And within that calm, the hollow of space was not a weight to bear, but a release to surrender to the very first comfort of a universe not yet awake. And from the still canvas of nothing, the hush folded more deeply, settling into what could only be felt as a dark sea without surface or shore. The darkness was not an enemy, not a threat, not an intrusion, but a presence spread wide and soft, like water without ripple, like an ocean that has chosen silence instead of wave. It lay calm and complete, extending in every direction, though direction itself was not yet defined. The quality of this darkness was not harsh, but quieting, not pressing in, but loosening like velvet drawn across thought, like the cool weight of air resting after a long breath. To rest within such a sea was to understand that darkness is not to be feared, but to be trusted for. In its depth, nothing moves to disturb, nothing stirs to awaken unrest. It was as though the whole of the void had taken on the stillness of a vast lake at night, its waters so steady that they mirrored not an image, but silence itself. The surface was not cold, nor was it warm. It was a neutral cradle, soft and endless sheet of calm. Darkness gathered gently, without rushing, without storm, and as it gathered, it carried the rhythm of rest, slow and unbroken. There was no sharp edge to divide within or beyond, no light to break the fold, only a sense of suspension, as though everything floated inside an endless tide that never rose and never fell. In this still ocean of shadow, there was an embrace more complete than arms, more patient than time, for time was not yet moving. The dark did not close in to suffocate, but opened out to cover, as a blanket is drawn across the body, as night wraps around the valleys with quiet inevitability. The darkness was wide, and in its wideness, it gave the gift of shelter, like a roof that extends forever, like a horizon that bends to carry whatever lies beneath. It was not a wall to resist, but a veil to soften, turning the vast expanse into a resting place. And within that veil was a pulse, a movement so slow it could barely be named. Darkness seemed to breathe, not with sound, not with light, but with the steady rhythm of something alive in its stillness. Each breath was longer than thought could measure, flowing outward, like the tide returning inward, like the calm of evening air. The inhale spread wide, the exhale folded close, and through this rhythm, the whole expanse seemed to pulse, as if the first heartbeat of the cosmos was hidden beneath its quiet surface. Darkness, then, was not absence, but breath in another form, and its steady exhalation carried calm into every fold of space. The sea of shadow continued boundless and deep, not marking where it began, not declaring where it ended, but holding everything within its embrace. It did not resist, it did not urge, it simply rested, and in its resting, it invited rest. The mind, drawn into such depth, could not struggle, for there was nothing to struggle against, only the ease of being carried, the still float of silence upon silence. The rhythm of darkness became the rhythm of peace, the slow assurance that no motion was needed, no sound was required, no light was missing. And so, the darkness remained patient and endless, with the softness of water that never moves and the strength of a tide that never breaks. It held the cosmos before the cosmos knew itself, and it whispered without voice that in shadow there is safety in stillness, there is breath, and in emptiness there is the comfort of being surrounded. Like a deep sea that does not stir, the darkness breathed quietly, endlessly, and with each breath the universe rested more deeply in its own beginning. In the calm that had no boundary, the silence itself seemed to lean, and in that leaning there rose the faintest quiver, like the breath of night remembering how to move. In the vast silence there appeared a ripple faint, and far a shift so small it might almost have gone unnoticed, yet in its softness it carried the sense of a beginning. It was not sound in the way. Sound would later be known, not a vibration to be heard with ears or measured by tone, but something closer to the memory of a breath. The hush of air exhaled into quiet night. The ripple was gentle, almost transparent, a disturbance that did not disturb, a motion that did not break stillness, but folded into it like a sigh. It was the first hint of change, not forceful, not abrupt, but patient and slow, an almost invisible wave, passing across the surface of nothingness. The darkness, once perfectly at rest, now held within it the rhythm of this new movement, like the faint pulse of a tide still far from shore. The shift was not sharp, nor did it fracture the calm. Instead, it expanded gently, echoing across the unformed expanse, with the softness of mist drifting over a valley. This first ripple did not announce itself with brilliance or command. It simply existed, unhurried, flowing outward as naturally as a breath flows from the chest, and in that flowing, the endless quiet took on a new dimension, as though silence itself had inhaled and exhaled for the very first time. This motion was neither light nor sound, neither touch nor thought, but it carried the character of all these things in seed, hidden within its still unfolding. It was the breath before breathing was known, the murmur before voice was born, the pulse before heartbeats had a place to echo. In its presence, the unshaped space seemed to lean forward as if listening, as if waiting for what might follow. The ripple was not the end of stillness, but its companion, moving alongside it, weaving into its fabric, reminding that stillness itself can carry a rhythm without breaking its calm. As the ripple extended, darkness was no longer entirely motionless. The vast sea did not collapse, did not scatter. It simply shifted, as though the fabric of night had quivered beneath a hidden hand. It was a tremor without urgency, a wave without crest, flowing in infinite patience. The movement was so slight that it might have been mistaken for the imagination of the void, yet it was real enough to touch everything gently and equally without boundary. Darkness, once absolute now, breathed with this pulse, and the breath continued slow and steady, like the steady rise and fall of an endless tide. The sense of firstness lingered here, the first change, the first motion, the first suggestion that rest could give way to rhythm. Yet it was not abrupt, it was not violent, it was as natural as the drifting of clouds, as subtle as the stirring of a dream. The ripple did not erase silence, but taught silence how to move. It did not erase stillness, but showed stillness how to breathe. In its presence, nothing was lost, yet everything became more than it had been, as though the void itself had begun to hum softly, a tone too faint to disturb, too deep to fade, and so the ripple passed through the infinite, circling endlessly, carrying with it the impression that creation would one day bloom, though now it remained only in suggestion, like a secret folded within a sigh. The darkness, now touched by motion, became more than absence. It was no longer only the deep sea of rest, but a sea that pulsed softly, its surface stirred by the earliest trace of rhythm. The first breath had been drawn, and though it carried no sound, it lingered like an echo, patient and unhurried, filling the unformed with the calm promise that stillness too can awaken gently. The quiet ripple drifted further, and within its gentle trace, something even softer began to unfold, as if silence itself was leaning toward a secret it had long been holding. Creation did not arrive as a blaze, not as a sudden burst that shattered the night, but as a call so small it could barely be named a murmur that seemed to hover just beneath the edge of hearing. It was a beginning so subtle that it felt more like an invitation than an event, more like the soft bend of a reed in the wind than the strike of flame. Within the endless hush, this call shimmered without force, and in its presence, the darkness felt less like absence and more like a doorway opening inward. A voice without a sound had entered the quiet, and yet the quiet was not broken. It was enriched, deepened, made tender by its own hidden tone. This first calling was not sharp, not commanding, but patient, like the faint resonance of a shell against the ear, carrying a sound that is not sound, yet still persuades the mind that something is moving within. It was not a roar, nor a clash, nor even a single note, but a vibration that lived in the spaces between a suggestion, rather than a declaration. This was the way of beginnings, not in sudden noise, but in the gentle opening that leaves room for what is to come. And so, the hush folded around this quiet murmur, accepting it, shaping itself to cradle it, as if darkness had chosen to sing without disturbing its own sleep. In this moment, everything began from softness, from the smallest gesture, from the unfolding of something that did not insist but only allowed. The fabric of space, still unformed, began to quiver with the memory of sound, though no sound had yet been born. The rhythm was the rhythm of breath, the slow pulse of an inhale, stretching long of an exhale, finding release of silence, discovering it could contain more than stillness. Like the opening of dawn before the sun has risen, it was the light not yet seen, but already felt, the voice not yet spoken, but already waiting on the tongue of time. And in that unfolding, the silence revealed its own voice, a voice so gentle that it could not frighten, so subtle that it could not disturb, a voice that seemed to come from the heart of stillness itself. This was not contradiction, for silence and whisper lived together, here woven into one another, as ocean and tide, as night and breath. The whisper was not outside the quiet, but inside it, carried along by the very stillness it seemed to soften. In this way, silence proved that it could speak without losing its calm, that it could carry meaning without raising its tone, that it could awaken gently without tearing the dream it held. The cosmos in this tender stage was neither dark alone nor soundless alone, but a harmony of both, shaped by what had opened. The whisper moved like a current beneath the surface, unseen yet present felt, rather than heard, imagined, rather than measured. It was enough to give motion to what had been entirely still, to give voice to what had been entirely quiet, to open what had been entirely closed. And yet nothing in this was harsh, nothing in this was sudden, for the first murmur was a lesson that the beginnings of worlds can arrive not through violence, but through the smallest unfolding, as soft as the touch of night upon the eyelids of sleep. The whisper lingered, circling gently through the silence, never overpowering, never pressing forward, only existing patient and unhurried. It was the first suggestion of presence, the first indication that emptiness might one day flower into form, that quiet might one day bloom into song. And even then, the hush remained, for the whisper was not an ending to silence, but its companion, its partner, its echo. Silence had not been broken. Silence had learned how to breathe with a voice softer than air. The murmur that had unfolded within the silence lingered gently, and as it lingered, the darkness itself seemed to draw closer, not as shadow pressing in, but as a vast cradle opening its arms. Darkness was not emptiness, not absence, not void to be feared. It was a resting place, tender and deep, stretching endlessly, like the embrace of night around a sleeping valley. In its stillness, it held the seed of comfort, surrounding all that might come, rocking the unformed world with patience too vast to be measured. To be within this dark was not to be lost, but to be sheltered, as though the cosmos itself lay in a cradle fashioned from its own calm. This cradle did not confine, did not restrain, but expanded gently like a blanket drawn wide across an endless plain, its folds smooth and unbroken. The darkness gathered without weight, and in its gathering, it quieted every motion, softened every edge, and gave rest to every trace of possibility. There was no sound within it, yet it sang in its own way, a lullaby, not of notes, but of stillness, a melody shaped from silence itself. The song of darkness was long, unhurried, unending, carrying with it the message that rest was the first gift of the universe. To yield into such stillness was to find that peace did not need to be sought. It was already present, breathing through the quiet, like air moving across a sleeping forest. Calm arose, not from effort, but from surrender, from the gentle recognition that nothing more was needed, that being held within the folds of the dark was enough. The darkness carried no sharpness, only softness, no command, only embrace. And in its embrace, the sense of rest spread like water, across stone, filling every gap, seeping into every corner, leaving no place untouched by its patience. There is an old telling from the lands of India, a whisper passed down as softly as night itself, that the universe rests within the breath of a god. They spoke of Vishnu, who dreams upon the endless sea, his chest rising and falling in infinite rhythm. When he sleeps, all of creation sleeps with him. When he exhales, the world begins to stir. When he inhales, the world dissolves gently back into quiet. In this way, darkness was never empty, for it was the dream of a god, a dream wide enough to hold stars and rivers, winds and mountains, hearts and silence. The cradle of shadow was not hollow, but alive, filled with the breath of eternity, moving without hurry. The myth was not a command, nor a doctrine, but a story folded into the hush, like a spark hidden within ash, a way to remind that rest is not nothing, that stillness is not absence, that darkness itself carries the weight of being alive. For within the dream of the god, the whole of existence was cherished, and the breath of night became the breath of all things. To imagine this was to feel that the cradle of dark was not only shelter, but memory, not only calm, but promise. So, the darkness rocked the cosmos gently, its lullaby unheard, but unending, its arms invisible, yet infinite. The first comfort of the universe was not in light, nor in sound, nor in shape, but in this cradle that gave rest to all beginnings. The deep shadow did not demand to be understood, nor did it require to be seen. It only asked to be trusted, and in that trust lay a peace greater than form, a peace that did not waver. And so, the silence continued, softened by the whisper of darkness, as cradle darkness, as dream darkness, as the first comfort of all. It was not a threat, never a void, but the velvet of night wrapping the seed of everything that was to come. And in that velvet, in that breath, in that dream, the universe was held, without weight, without fear, without end, resting in the quiet arms of the dark, rocked into being by the first lullaby of time. The deep cradle of darkness lingered calm and endless, until within its folds, a delicate shimmer began to drift, as though night itself was ready to dream of brightness. It was no blaze, no sudden burst that tore through stillness, but a line so small it seemed more memory than event, more suggestion than flame. The universe opened a single stroke, thin and weightless, like a thread of dust, catching a hidden glow. This first ray was not fire, not brilliance, not even color, but the faintest outline of possibility drawn gently across the dark. It was like a brush stroke too soft, to mark a signal so subtle it seemed to breathe more than shine, hovering in the silence as if it belonged there. This faint light did not overwhelm, nor did it command attention. It moved like a whisper traveling through a quiet hall present, but never loud certain, but never forceful. Its nature was restraint, a softness that asked nothing, a presence that offered calm. The ray stretched like the thought of dawn, the idea of day before the sun has risen shimmering, just enough to remind that silence need not remain alone. It was a message without words, a sign without declaration, a trace that hinted at all that would follow. To see such a beginning was not to witness brilliance, but to rest within a signal almost too faint to be noticed. The darkness did not resist, it did not recoil, but allowed it to move across the void like a sigh moves across the lips of night. It was not war between shadow and light, but companionship, the opening of space to carry more than silence. The ray lay upon the horizon, of nothing like a feather, like a distant lantern glimpsed across an endless plain, so far away it could only be felt as a thought, a possibility. The softness of its presence was its power, for it revealed that beginnings do not require force. A single line of glow lighter than air, thinner than breath, was enough to change the quality of the dark. The still sea of shadow now held a reflection, a point to lean toward a shimmer, to balance the weight of silence. Not a roar, not a strike, but a gentle touch, the faintest reminder that stillness could hold more than itself. It was the smallest movement in the grandest field, and yet it was enough, for in its tenderness lay the first promise of form, the first promise of unfolding. This was the first blink of the cosmos, not the gaze of a burning star, but the flicker of an eyelid opening into dream. The light was like the eye of night slowly waking, like the delicate pulse of a heart testing its rhythm, like a child of shadow learning to breathe. It was not sudden knowledge, but soft awareness, not full awakening, but the brush of consciousness beginning to rise. In its gentleness, it carried no demand, only invitation, an invitation for silence, to grow into song for stillness, to open into time. And so, the ray remained stretching across nothing thin and shimmering, refusing to dominate, choosing instead to linger. Its patience was its nature, its distance, its beauty. It did not strike the dark, it did not scatter the void, it only rested, glowing faintly, quietly, endlessly. The silence around it grew softer in response, folding around the shimmer like a cloak around a flame, not smothering, not consuming, only protecting. In this harmony, darkness and light became less opposites than partners weaving their first rhythm together in the loom of the void. The universe, still resting in its cradle, had now opened its eyes, not wide, not fully, but with a single gentle blink that brought with it a glow as fragile as dust and as steady as breath. It was a reminder that creation begins not with thunder, but with the faintest shimmer, the first line drawn in silence, the first glow caught in endless night. And in that delicate presence, the cosmos discovered its first gentle secret, that light in its softest form could speak more deeply than brilliance ever could. What had been only silence now carried a shimmer, faint as a breath, expanding slowly, as though the dark itself had chosen to exhale. Light did not burst forward, did not rush, did not scatter the calm. It drifted outward the way fog slips across a meadow, filling spaces without hurry, without sound. The darkness did not retreat in fear, nor collapse under its touch, but opened gently, as if it had always been waiting to carry this glow. In its unfolding, the radiance was more like breath than flame, more like dawn than fire, stretching slowly into what had once been only shadow. The air of the cosmos, if such air could be imagined, seemed to inhale the light as it spread, resting more deeply with each delicate expansion. The glow reached outward in layers, not in leaps, smoothing itself over the unshaped fabric of space, as though painting with the thinnest brush of color. It was like the first strokes of morning upon water, when a lake begins to reveal its surface, quiet and shimmering beneath the faintest promise of day. There was no hurry in this expansion, no urgency, only rhythm slow, even measured like the rise and fall of a long breath. The radiance did not disturb silence, but wove itself into it, as if light had learned to walk in step with quiet, turning absence into presence, without breaking the calm. The dark, now touched by this gentle glow, shifted in tone, yet still remained vast and unbroken, holding the brightness within itself like a host welcoming a guest. It was not opposition, but union, not conquest, but blending the soft weaving of shade and shimmer. Together, they created a space more layered a canvas where stillness held glow, and glow softened stillness. The slow spread was not simply movement, but an unfolding of balance, a meeting of two halves that had always belonged together. The hush of the universe breathed longer now, as though it too followed the rhythm of this gentle light. As the glow continued, it resembled the sky at the edge of dawn, when the earth lies still, and the first pale arc appears not brilliant, not dazzling, but steady, spreading across the horizon in patience. It was this patience that defined it, the refusal to hurry, the decision to linger. Each trace of radiance seeped like dew into the folds of silence, each shimmer carrying calm rather than command. It was as though light had chosen to comfort darkness, to wrap itself gently around the edges, to lean closer without forcing distance. In this way, the cosmos began to resemble a dream, drifting into wakefulness, not with sudden clarity, but with a soft lifting of shadow. The slow expansion carried with it a sense of continuity, the impression that every breath of glow was connected to the next, each one rising and falling with the same unbroken rhythm. Light did not spread like fire leaping across dry ground, but like ripples moving outward across a pond at dusk, gentle and circular, each one widening into another. The stillness of the universe absorbed this rhythm as though it had always known it, and the spreading glow became indistinguishable from the breath of the cosmos itself. To call it illumination would be too sharp, too heavy. It was instead a kind of caress, a brushing of presence upon the unseen. The vast expanse, once only a cradle of shadow, was now a cradle of shimmer, as well rocking both darkness and light in equal measure. The glow, so subtle and so unhurried, brought no strain, asked for no attention, but lingered like a presence that simply wished to be. Its spread was endless, yet never forceful, its pace unchanging, its rhythm calm, and in its patience, it became the first cycle, the first tide, the first suggestion that time itself would follow such measured breathing. So the glow continued to drift, dissolving shadow, not by force, but by weaving with it, expanding like mist, across an endless field, rising like breath that has no end. The universe in this moment was not blazing, not burning, but breathing, breathing in light as it spread, breathing out shadow as it softened breathing, with a rhythm that promised both rest and becoming. And in that breath, in that quiet tide of glow, the cosmos began to awaken with the gentlest of motions, a dawn stretched across eternity. What drifted gently outward as a veil of radiance soon began to reveal a subtler pattern, delicate and patient, as though the brightness itself wished to scatter seeds into the quiet expanse. Tiny points emerged faint at first, small enough to seem like nothing more than glimmers, trembling at the edge of perception. They did not rush forward or force their way into the silence, but arrived as if carried on a breath that did not hurry, pausing between each appearance, letting the darkness cradle them even as they began to shine. Each spark was fragile, yet its presence softened the endless night, giving the vastness the quality of soil being touched by dew. One followed another, and then another, until the emptiness was no longer a plain of uniform shade, but a garden slowly awakening in its own rhythm. Each glimmer resembled a seedling, a tiny kernel of fire resting quietly until the time to grow was felt, and then its light spread out like the gentle opening of a leaf. The stillness did not resist them, and the dark seemed almost to welcome the presence of these faint flames, allowing them to root, to breathe, to expand without weight. Clusters formed, not hurried, not abrupt, but gathered in harmony, as though invisible hands arranged them with care across the immeasurable sky. A faint hum, not sound but suggestion, wove between them, binding each small beacon to the next, till the hush itself seemed to glow from within. What once was endless shadow had become a canvas speckled with living lights, so quiet, so unforced, that the transformation felt like the slow blooming of flowers at night. Stars unfolded like blossoms, not in bursts of fire, but in petals of radiance unfurling one after another, their glow spreading like the perfume of a meadow carried by a wind too light to stir the grass. The constellations were not yet written, the forms not yet named, and so the clusters breathed without story, only with presence waiting to be seen, as they truly were tender, unfinished, serene. Their growth was less an act of power than of patience, a gradual layering of shimmer upon shimmer, so steady that it seemed less like change and more like remembering what had always been meant to appear. The darkness did not vanish. It lingered like the fertile ground beneath the blossoms, holding them in place, framing their shapes and offering its depth so that the brightness could be known. Without shadow, the seeds of fire could not be noticed, and so the two rested together, one folding around the other, in a rhythm that spoke of balance rather than opposition. This was not a conquest of light overnight, but a companionship, a soft weaving of two states that belonged to one breath. Every cluster shimmered as though breathing on its own, inhaling with a faint shimmer, exhaling with a dim retreat, a cycle so gentle it soothed rather than startled. Watching such rhythms unfold was like listening to a lullaby without words, where the melody was carried not by notes, but by the spacing between them, the pauses that gave shape to the soundless song. The sky was no longer a flat field of dark, but a meadow of glowing stems, each bearing blossoms that drifted in their own invisible breeze. No urgency guided their growth, only the assurance that there was time, an endless time to open, to shine, to rest, and to continue. The seeds of brightness had become stars. The stars had become gatherings, and the gatherings had become a chorus of gentle light woven into the silence. And so, from a stillness that once knew only shadow, a new presence emerged, patient, unhurried, and tender as the unfolding of petals at dusk. The hush remained, but now it carried with it the soft pulse of countless blossoms, shimmering as though they had always waited in the wings of darkness for the moment to awaken. As the clusters of brightness settled into their quiet flowering, something subtler began to unfold, as though the blossoms of light were not only shining, but also breathing, carrying a rhythm that moved gently through the vastness. The glow no longer seemed still. It rose and fell in waves so faint they could almost be mistaken for silence itself. Yet they carried with them the suggestion of a pulse, a steady inhalation and exhalation woven into the fabric of the cosmos. The radiance did not come only to be seen, but to be felt as presence, like the hush of wind gliding through tall grass, or the slow tide brushing the shore with patient hands. Each shimmer seemed to join this hidden cycle, offering not a spectacle, but a heartbeat. In that rhythm, warmth traveled quietly, spreading across the dark like the tender touch of morning air upon the skin of a still lake. It did not rush to fill the hole nor overwhelm the shadow it touched, but arrived gently, step by step, until the vast expanse carried with it a softness that invited rest. This warmth was not fire, not heat to consume, but a gentler energy, like the low hum of earth itself, carrying a welcome as old as time. It was as though the universe had extended its hand, not with urgency, but with kindness, as though to say that in this immensity there was room for calm, room for ease, room for a quiet belonging. The light became more than vision. It became a slow embrace, holding without weight, encompassing without pressure, circling everything in a comfort that required no response. Nothing needed to be done. Nothing needed to be changed. The dark, which had once seemed endless, now breathed with the glow, as though they had become one body, moving in unison. The silence, far from being broken, was carried into a deeper stillness, not empty, but filled with the steady presence of luminous breath. Each wave of brightness folded into the next, as if the entire sky had become a vast chest, rising and falling in infinite patience. The cycle had no beginning and no end, only the steady repetition of softness, repeating like a lullaby without words. Within that lull, the warmth grew more intimate, though it never pressed closer than it was welcome to. It lingered at the edges, brushed lightly across the distances, seeped into the fabric of the unseen, until the universe seemed clothed in a mantle woven not of cloth but of kindness. The glow became less of a point to look at and more of a rhythm to rest, within a cadence that slowed every thought, every echo of movement, until all was aligned with the quiet measure of its breath. The stars themselves pulsed with this rhythm, faint expansions, followed by gentle retreats, like the smallest sighs drifting into the hush of night. And though countless in number, none competed, none struggled to outshine the others, but instead they seemed to listen to the same tempo, their lights swelling and softening together as though they were a choir of breathing flames. The night was no longer an expanse dotted with sparks, but a living body vast and calm, resting in the simplicity of inhalation and exhalation. The rhythm spread outward, without boundary, moving through silence like ripples across a lake that has no shore. It carried with it a sense of balance, a harmony so quiet that it might almost be missed, yet once noticed, it became impossible to forget. Light had ceased to be only an illumination. It had become a companion to stillness, a partner to shadow, a reminder that existence itself could move gently with no haste. No need for climax, no fear of ending. And so, the glow with its slow rhythm became less a thing to observe and more a place to rest, a cradle, woven of light and dark, rocking softly in the breathing of the infinite. The night no longer felt separate from the light nor the light from the dark. They had merged into a single endless lull, where every shimmer was both a greeting and a farewell, where every pull was both an arrival and a return. The universe breathed, and in that breath was peace. The rhythm of radiance lingered unhurried, and from its calm expansion, another layer unfolded softer than a whisper. The brightness did not strike against the dark, nor push it away, but drifted over it like fabric spread across a bed of silence, laying itself down with infinite patience. It was not harsh, not sharp, but woven of warmth so light it could only be compared to a shawl resting on shoulders. In the quiet of evening, a covering that asked for nothing but stillness. Light became not only a presence to be seen, but a texture to be felt like the tender weight of a cloth settling upon the body. Within that covering, thoughts slowed their restless movements, as if the very act of shining carried a lull that touched the hidden corners of mind and soothed them into pause. There was no command in its glow, only invitation, no urgency, only patience, as if it knew the natural pace of the universe was already slow, already deep, and only needed to be remembered. The soft radiance draped across silence, as though it had always belonged there, folding darkness into itself, without conflict, without demand. In this weaving, time itself seemed to loosen, uncoiling like thread, set free from its spool, moving not forward or backward, but in gentle spirals that returned again and again to calm. The dark had once been vast, and the light had once been new, but now they mingled so closely that they became inseparable, like two currents in the same sea. The warmth did not erase the coolness of shadow. Instead, it joined it, the way dawn does not destroy the night, but rests upon it until they are indistinguishable. The air of infinity seemed filled with this soft embrace, carrying with it the suggestion that nothing ever needed to be resisted, nothing ever needed to be feared. The old stories whispered of this too, though in their own quiet language. From the depths of the Greek imagination came the tale of chaos, the first darkness out of which Eros, the spirit of love, was born. From that love light began to spread. It did not come as fire or force, but as a tenderness rising from shadow, a reminder that brightness did not exist to tear apart what was before it, but to cradle it, to join it, to make the silent fabric of space even more complete. The myth carried a truth, not of science, but of comfort, that light is not the enemy of dark, but its companion, its soft echo, its patient twin. So, the glow was never a conquest, never a battle fought in the heavens, but a union where shadow remained. The bed and light became the blanket laid across it. The vastness of space seemed to breathe more evenly under this balance, inhaling with the weight of shadow, exhaling with the caress of light, a cycle with no end and no strain. Each breath of this cosmic fabric reassured that being held was not a momentary gift, but a constant rhythm, as inevitable as the rising of tides. And within that embrace, stillness deepened. The mind that might once have chased questions now found itself content to rest, not because it had answers, but because it no longer needed them. The glow required no thought, no explanation, only acceptance of its softness, which was more than enough. Darkness, too, was content, for it had not been diminished, only completed, folded into something larger and more tender than itself. The stars that had begun as scattered sparks now pulsed within this wide embrace, each one both separate and joined as though stitched together by invisible threads of light. They were not alone, nor isolated, but part of the same shawl spread across the sky, a fabric without seam or edge. The universe was no longer a stage of opposites, but a single cloth woven of night and glow warmth and hush. And so, the embrace lingered, not fleeting, but endless, the radiance resting upon infinity with the patience of one who knows eternity has no hurry. The light did not insist upon being noticed. It existed simply to hold, to soothe, to wrap the endless silence in a comfort so gentle it could only be compared to sleep itself. The hush of light lingered, and within its calm, a subtler motion began to ripple outward, not sudden, not sharp, but so faint it could have been mistaken for silence itself, stretching a little further. It was a wave, though not like those that strike upon a shore, but more like the breath of a sleeping sea, a rise and fall that carried no urgency. Each line of movement was as delicate as the vibration of a string barely touched, as though the fabric of the universe had been brushed by invisible hands. The sound was not sound, and yet it moved like music, a suggestion of tone woven into the stillness. The waves spread one after another, neither quick nor loud, but in patterns that resembled notes, drifting through air too vast to measure. They did not clash or collide, but arranged themselves like the first bars of a melody, soft and unhurried. Each ripple was like a key pressed gently, sending its resonance into the dark, not to fill it, but to remind it that it could sway, that it could hum, that even silence could carry rhythm. Between the pulses, the pause remained wide and deep, a reminder that music does not only come from sound, but also from the space between tones. It was in these pauses that the cosmos breathed, inhaling in the quiet, exhaling in the gentle undulations of wave after wave. The stillness became alive, not because it was broken, but because it revealed its hidden depth, like a calm lake, revealing its quiet ripples when moonlight falls across it. As the waves continued, they seemed to fold the universe into a wider song, one without beginning or end, where every ripple called another, and every echo softened into the next. It was not a performance, not an orchestra with grandeur, but a lullaby spread across infinity. Each vibration was mild enough to be mistaken for a sigh, yet steady enough to remind that existence itself was a rhythm. And in this weaving of gentle tones, darkness no longer felt empty. It became a canvas, alive with resonance, as though the void had chosen to sing softly to itself. No sharp edges, no sudden notes, only the steady unfolding of motion that mirrored the tide, the wind through high grasses, or the heartbeat resting in sleep. So, the universe did not burst into music, it drifted into it. The waves stretched further and further, carrying with them a softness that could never be hurried, a patience that only infinity could hold. The song was not made of words, nor did it need them. It was enough that it moved enough, that it swayed enough, that it invited stillness to become more than still. The image of keys on a hidden instrument arose not struck, but touched as though by memory, each tone fading slowly until it merged back into the quiet that had birthed it. And in that merging, there was comfort, for no note ever truly ended, it only returned to the silence, ready to be sung again in another form. Thus the first symphony unfolded, not for listeners, not for applause, but for the sheer existence of motion. In calm, the cosmos, once only silence and shadow, now carried within it the suggestion of harmony, a song as endless as space itself. It was not loud enough to disturb, not strong enough to overwhelm, but tender enough to cradle all that drifted within its expanse. The darkness accepted these ripples as though they had always belonged, like the sea welcoming the tide, like branches swaying to a wind that had only just arrived. There was no separation between the stillness and the wave, between the quiet and the music. They were two breaths of the same body, two faces of the same dream, two halves of the same unbroken whole. And so, the song remained a steady murmur across eternity, soft as a lullaby, patient as the night wide, as the sky. It asked for nothing, promised nothing, and yet carried everything in its unhurried flow. The ripples of soundless music stretched outward, and in their wake, a softer resonance began to shimmer, as though the vastness itself had discovered an instrument hidden within its own expanse. The stars, newly formed, yet ancient in their glow, seemed to hum in voices too delicate for ears, but strong enough for the silence to carry. Each one sang not in bursts or shouts, but in notes so stretched and slow that they became more like tones woven into the fabric of night tones that drifted endlessly without ever ceasing. Their light was visible, but their song lingered deeper, felt as a vibration, like a whisper pressed into the heart of space. The music was not bound to one place, nor confined to one path. It poured in every direction, spreading across emptiness, like perfume in still air, faint yet unescapable. Each star added its own timbre, some soft and low as the murmur of a hidden river, others high and bright as a single note drawn from glass. Together they did not clash, but blended like strands of thread, weaving into a cloth, like petals forming the curve of a flower that opens without haste. In this gentle composition, silence remained the background, holding the sound in place, as a canvas holds the color of paint. Without silence, there could be no tone. Without stillness, there could be no resonance. The stars did not fight the void, but leaned upon it, used its depth as their stage, allowing their distant songs to echo across gulfs too wide for measure. And so the dark was no longer only quiet, but a resonant chamber filled with the tender vibration of light turned into music. Each note, if it could be called a note, carried patience within it. There was no urgency, no need to reach an ending. The song of the stars was not like a melody of earth, bound to rhythm and measure. It was a hymn without beginning, a chant without conclusion, a pulse as unbroken as breath itself. It continued not because it had to, but because existence itself was already a song, and to hum was simply to be. As the harmony deepened, the night seemed to pulse with life, though not the life of beating hearts or moving limbs, but the quiet vitality of things that endure simply by being present. The music asked for no attention, yet it filled all things. It demanded no witness, yet it seemed to reach everything that drifted in its path. The glow of the stars was their visible gift, but their inaudible resonance was their secret, a gift carried beneath the surface, soft and eternal. The cosmos became an orchestra without conductor, each star giving what it had, each tone finding its place, not because it was directed, but because the natural order of infinity was balance. The hum rose and fell in cycles, swelling with light receding into dark, returning again with the patience of tides. Nothing was rushed, nothing was forced. It was enough to continue, enough to breathe enough, to let the vibration stretch across eternity, like threads of silver drawn through endless night. And so, the stars lingered, their tones shimmering like bells rung once and left to echo their harmonies, weaving through one another with no beginning and no end. If one listened closely enough, it could be felt that the stars did not merely exist in silence, but that silence itself was singing through them, using their light as instruments, their distance as strings. It was less a performance than a state of being, less a composition than the very nature of the universe turning into sound. The great expanse hummed with this low song endless, and slow, softer than a sigh, steadier than a heartbeat. It carried within it the weight of rest, the reassurance of cycles, the calm that arises when nothing is demanded but presence itself. And the night, vast and eternal, remained not empty, but full of this quiet hymn, the far-off ringing of stars that would never fade, only fold back into silence, only to emerge again and again. The distant ringing of the stars lingered in the silence, and from that unbroken hum, another movement arose, not separate, but woven through, as if the cosmos had found a gentler voice waiting within its breath. The space between suns did not remain empty. It shimmered faintly, as though light itself had learned to speak in tones too soft to be called words. Each glimmer extended like a sigh stretching across the dark, with patience, its rhythm unhurried, its presence quiet yet undeniable. The glow of light became more than vision, for it pulsed in cycles, expanding and drawing back, like the chest of infinity rising and falling in rest. This breath of the universe did not disturb the calm, but deepened it, adding a steady cadence to the silence already alive with resonance. Where before there had only been the long song of stars, now the very fabric of space joined, vibrating with luminous threads, weaving together shadow and glow. It was not the kind of music that demanded attention, but a lull, a background so tender that it lulled existence itself into stillness. The dark, far from being broken, leaned closer to the light, and together they formed a melody too vast to end. In this song, light did not shine as a blaze, but moved as a soft tide, advancing and retreating, touching the edges of void, like waves against a shore, too wide for measure. The rhythm of this tide was breath long and unhurried, a respiration that belonged not to any one being, but to the cosmos itself. To witness it was to feel that existence was inhaling and exhaling, drawing life in silence, releasing life in silence with no urgency, no limit, no need for completion. The Song of Light was not confined to points alone. It expanded into fields, spread into patterns, each shimmer echoing another, each glow leaning into the next. Together, they gave the impression not of a scattered choir, but of one unbroken voice, vast yet tender, endless yet close, singing in the only way infinity could, by being. The stars glowed, the waves moved, and the space between them filled with a radiance that carried the sound of rest. It was a song that folded into itself, repeating without repetition, circling without closure, returning in every breath to the same unhurried cadence. No climax awaited, no sharp descent threatened. It was a hymn designed not for an ending, but for the continuation of being. Light would rise, light would soften, and within each change lay the constancy of rhythm, like a lullaby sung by eternity itself. The harmony deepened as the glow began to resemble not only light, but warmth, a gentle presence that caressed as much as it illuminated. It spread across the vastness, with the delicacy of dawn, not to awaken, but to cradle, not to reveal, but to reassure. In this warmth there was no demand, only invitation. In this glow there was no command, only the permission to rest. Space did not resist. Space opened, receiving the breath, carrying the tone, holding the glow. In return, it provided the silence needed for the song to endure, the stillness needed for a rhythm to be felt, the embrace needed for light to soften instead of burn. The two, light and breath, silence and glow, leaned on one another, becoming indistinguishable, becoming one vast hymn of balance. And so, the universe sang not loudly, not with grandeur, but with the patience of air moving gently through unseen branches, with the calm of mist flowing over a sleeping lake. Its voice was light, its rhythm was breath, its silence was the bed where both could rest together. Nothing hurried, nothing strained. The song simply continued wide and soft, eternal and quiet. From the weaving of light and breath, another movement extended outward, so gradual it felt less like a change and more like the natural lengthening of silence into sound. The song that began within the stars did not remain close, nor did it confine itself to a single place. It unfurled in waves, patient and long expanding, without boundary, like ripples across water that never meet an edge. The tones, too delicate to be named, drifted in cycles that mirrored the quiet pulse of infinity, repeating without urgency, layering upon one another, until the whole of space was filled with a hymn that belonged to no single source. It was not a chorus to be listened to, but an atmosphere to be dissolved into. Each vibration moved slowly, stretching across vastness in threads so thin they seemed weightless, yet their presence remained steady, an unseen fabric binding the night. This was not music meant to be followed note by note, but a current of sound so continuous that it became indistinguishable from silence itself. The dark remained, but it no longer felt empty. It carried the resonance of something alive, though its life was not quickened by urgency, but softened by endless calm. The expansion of this song did not come with speed or force. It drifted outward as though it had always existed, simply waiting to be noticed. The tones were light, without glare sound, without noise movement, without motion. They spread evenly, filling distance the way dawn seeps into valleys, not all at once but with patience, as though each moment were enough. There was no rush for completion, for the song had no ending, to reach only an eternal unfolding that carried within it the essence of rest. As it grew, the song became less an expression and more a state of being. The cosmos did not sing to announce itself. It sang because its very nature was harmony, because silence itself leaned into melody when given light and breath. The hymn flowed endlessly, not separate from stillness, but resting upon it, not apart from darkness, but woven into it until all things existed within a balance of tone and quiet. This balance was wide and unbroken, like a horizon that cannot be measured, a tide that moves without ceasing, a cycle that repeats with neither beginning nor conclusion. In that continuity, the song gained strength, not by force but by persistence, not by height but by depth. It was a low hum, carried across eternity, more felt than heard, more sensed than known, steady as a heartbeat that does not falter, gentle as breathing in sleep. The spread of tones became a blanket of resonance, wrapping around the stars, folding through the void, laying itself gently across everything that floated in its path. It was warmth, without fire movement, without wind, music without voice, a hymn designed not to stir, but to soothe. Within its presence, even silence felt cradled, no longer bare, no longer stark, but filled with an unseen texture, as though every fragment of space had been given a place within the song. It was not uniform, for each note belonged to its own star, yet together they formed no dissonance. Each tone blended into the next, dissolving the boundaries of difference, creating an expanse where all sounds were one sound and all rests were one rest. This was not the grandeur of a symphony rising to climax, but the patience of a lullaby drawn into eternity, a melody so stretched and slow that it became indistinguishable from the rhythm of existence itself. And so the song continued, vast and steady, not calling attention, but surrounding all things with the reassurance of permanence. It did not grow louder, it did not fade. It simply remained, expanding as wide as infinity, echoing as deep as silence, carrying with it the calm certainty that, in the endlessness of space, nothing was demanded, nothing was hurried, and everything was already at rest. The vast hymn of light and breath lingered in the distance, and into that unbroken rhythm entered an older murmur, a story carried from voices long past, blending with the silence as though it had always belonged there. Among the first people of distant lands, it was told that the world was woven from a song so patient and so deep that it did not end when words stopped, but continued in the mountains, in the rivers, in the plains that stretched under endless skies. Each stone was said to carry a note, each stream, a line of melody, each tree, a pause held in stillness. To them, existence itself was not built, but sung, a fabric created not by force but by a vibration, not by noise but by resonance. In that telling, the ground was never just earth, but the body of the song slowed into form. The air was never only air, but the voice stretched into breath. The sky was never merely sky, but the lingering echo of tones too wide for ears. The world was melody embodied the visible shape of music that had been sung into stillness. Nothing stood silent, for silence itself was part of the song, a rest folded between notes, a pause that carried meaning as surely as sound. The story spoke of time not as a straight path, but as a cycle of verses, repeated and transformed, a chant that circled endlessly. The land in this way of seeing was not separate from music, but was the music given shape. Mountains rose not as stone alone, but as chords, made solid rivers, moved not only as water, but as refrains returning with each flow. In their view, life walked upon a score, written in sound, a song so wide that no being could know it whole, yet every step was a part of it. To rest within such a song was to recognize that all things were cradled by tone, all movements carried by rhythm. The earth did not need to speak loudly. It sang in whispers of wind, in the hush of nightfall, in the low hum that rose from deep ground and stretched toward the horizon. Even silence stretched, and patient was part of the harmony, a note too long to be noticed, but without which the melody would never remain whole. The tale told by voices watching stars as they drifted over sleeping lands suggested that the universe itself was still singing. The galaxies spread their chords, the stars provided tones, the darkness allowed the rests, and together the music wove not only landscapes, but the very calm that rested upon them. To hear it was not to strain for sound, but to surrender to stillness, to feel the world breathing with tones unbroken by time. This was not a song meant to awaken, nor a hymn meant to instruct. It was a lullaby, as wide as the horizon, designed to hold, not to move, to cradle, not to command. Each mountain stood as a low note, sustaining itself across centuries, each wave as a gentle refrain returning again and again, each shadow as the pause that made the light's melody possible. To live within it was to float upon music, to walk within harmony, to breathe as part of a chorus that never ceased. And so, the old story blended with the present hum, not breaking it, not altering it, but deepening its softness, reminding that the song of the stars was not apart from the earth, but echoed through every stone and leaf, every ripple and cloud. In this way, the lullaby of creation was not only above, but below, not only distant, but near, not only ancient, but eternal. The hymn stretched on as gentle, and even as before, covering the wide silence, with tones too slow to measure, too patient to disturb, too vast to fade. It continued not to end, but to remain reminding that in the quiet vibration of space and in the whispered legends of earth, all things were always already singing. The long hymn of creation drifted outward, and in its fading, another presence revealed itself, quieter than sound, softer than light, a calm that seemed to open as the music drew away. The tones that once spread like threads across the vastness did not vanish, but they withdrew into the fabric of silence as ripples sink back into the stillness of a lake. Their resonance lingered faintly, but only as memory, a shimmer that touched the edges of perception before dissolving into the wide hush. The departure was not abrupt, but gradual, a retreat so gentle it felt more like rest than absence, more like the completion of a breath than the end of a song. In that retreat, silence grew again, but it was no longer the hollow silence of beginnings. It was silence filled with the imprint of melody, silence softened by the memory of tones, silence carrying within it the the quiet assurance of something that had been sung. The calm was deeper now, like night after rainfall, like a sky cleared of clouds, like the soft pause after a sigh has left the lungs. The universe seemed to hold itself in stillness, as though honoring what had been played, as though listening to echoes that only the void could keep. This was not silence as emptiness, but silence as presence, a presence that enfolded everything with an invisible hand. The stars still glowed, but they no longer hummed as before. Their notes had receded into whispers, and the vastness held them like secrets hidden beneath the breath of space. In their fading, the quiet became stronger, more complete, stretching across distance with the patience of eternity. The stillness did not press or weigh. It opened and released. It felt like an exhalation, stretched endlessly, leaving the air calm, leaving the sky balanced, leaving the vastness free of motion, yet full of rest. Within it, the faint memory of the cosmic hymn remained, but only as a distant thread, a softened echo, too far to disturb the calm. What lingered was a quiet so steady it seemed eternal, a lull cradling the universe within its rhythm. Each fragment of creation rested within that hush. Galaxies floated like lanterns, set adrift on dark water, their movement so slow it became indistinguishable from stillness. Light shimmered faintly, yet even its glow seemed subdued, as though it too had chosen to rest, to settle back into the rhythm of calm. Nothing was lost. Everything remained, but all within the gentleness of a pause as vast as infinity itself. The return to quiet did not erase the song. It carried the song within itself, like soil carrying the memory of rain, like night carrying the memory of sunset. The notes had not disappeared, but had sunk deeper, folded into silence, hidden beneath layers of stillness, where they could continue to hum, softly unseen, unheard, but always present. In this way, the calm became both an ending and a continuation, a silence that did not deny the music, but became its natural rest. And so the universe breathed again, long and slow in rhythm, with the stillness that expanded across its body. There was no rush to begin another sound, no urgency to fill the hush. It was enough to rest enough, to pause enough, to let silence cradle all that had been sung. The vastness, dark and wide, did not seem empty, but seemed whole, as though the quiet itself were the true song, the song too large for tone, too patient for rhythm, too eternal for change. The hymn had receded, but the calm remained. The music had drifted away, but what it left behind was not loss, only fullness, only balance, only the wide embrace of silence covering everything like a soft sky. And in that wide embrace, the universe seemed to sleep, not in forgetting, but in remembering, not in darkness, but in rest, not in silence alone, but in the deep music of quiet itself. The silence spread its wide wings, and into its depth the brightness that once sang began to soften, drawing itself inward with the patience of dusk, folding over a long horizon. The light did not vanish, but it quieted its radiance, dimming into something gentler, like embers cooling beneath a night sky, glowing faintly as though wrapped in the hush of the dark. No flame flickered, no blaze startled. Instead, it drifted downward, in tone, settling upon the vastness, the way ash settles upon still air, weightless, fragile, and serene. The glow that once reached outward now curved back, folding over itself in silence, leaving the universe touched not by brilliance, but by softness. This softening was not decline, but rest, not disappearance, but transformation, as though light had remembered the need to pause and allowed itself to become tender. It spread no longer with urgency, but with patience, shimmering faintly in places like mist that remembers its own translucence. The stars, once bright with song, dimmed into whispers, their glow reduced to a memory. Their music carried not as sound, but as the quiet impression of warmth upon emptiness. The dark did not fight this change. It opened gently, receiving the dim light like a cradle receives what is laid within it. Shadows lengthened, but not with sharpness. They softened too, blending into the remaining glow, until both seemed indistinguishable, two halves of the same rhythm, night and brightness leaning into one another. The cosmos appeared less like a stage and more like a bed where all that once moved came to rest, where light no longer sought to command, but simply to remain. The fading brightness touched every corner of space, but it did so lightly, leaving only a faint trace, as though reminding the vastness that nothing needed to shine forever. The glow resembled embers, covered in cool ash, still alive, but quiet, still warm, but hidden beneath softness. It was not absence, but presence in another form, the continuation of light through its gentlest state. In this gentleness, there was no fear, no alarm, only the calm assurance that brightness too knows how to sleep. Every glimmer slowed its rhythm, every star lowered its voice, every shimmer withdrew into a patience too vast to measure. The universe appeared wrapped in a veil of twilight, neither entirely dark nor entirely lit, but balanced in between, where the eyes need not strain and the heart need not quicken. The hush of this balance stretched endlessly, filling space with a quiet harmony that required nothing further. It seemed as though the light itself breathed its inhalation, long its exhalation longer, each cycle slower than the last, until breath and silence became indistinguishable. The cosmos moved within this rhythm, a rhythm not marked by speed or sound, but by the steady continuity of stillness layered with glow. Each faint shimmer was a reminder that even as brightness withdrew, it never truly ceased. It lingered as memory, as presence, as the soft weight of ash that carries within it the warmth of flame. And so, the glow sank deeper, folding itself into the expanse, until the night became whole once more. Yet it was not the emptiness of a void, but the fullness of rest, the fullness of a calm that holds both light and dark within its embrace. The silence grew richer with this quiet radiance, carrying not only the absence of sound, but the presence of memory, not only the absence of blaze, but the presence of glow. The fading light remained, not in brilliance, but in stillness, not in sharp rays, but in whispers of brightness, delicate and enduring. And in this softened form, the cosmos exhaled long and slow, leaving behind no urgency, no need for motion, only the endless hush where light rested like ash, where silence deepened like night, and where the vastness found itself whole again. The ashes of light lingered in the stillness, and into that softened calm came a deeper rhythm, as though the universe itself drew in a breath too wide to notice, too slow to disturb. The inhalation was not sudden, nor was it marked by sound. It unfolded as a steady pull, a gathering of quiet, within quiet, expanding across the endless dark, with the patience of a tide returning to shore. The cosmos did not rush, for there was no urgency. It only inhaled, as though it had always done so, its chest invisible, but vast, filling with the substance of silence. The movement was a long unbroken, drawn through the fabric of night, like wind through branches, like mist slipping inward toward hidden valleys. In that long intake, everything seemed to pause, yet the pause was not emptiness, but balance. The stars continued their faint glow, but they too seemed to lean into the rhythm, flickering more slowly, softening their presence as though they were listening. Each distant galaxy appeared suspended, caught in the great inhalation, their light bending like strands drawn gently into a greater breath. Even the dark itself seemed to deepen, folding into layers that carried the impression of air, filling lungs too large to measure. The breath was steady, neither shallow nor hurried, but wide and profound. It gathered the residue of songs once sung, the shimmer of light, now fading, the quiet of silence newly formed. All was pulled gently inward, not to vanish, but to rest within the long rhythm. Nothing resisted. Everything was carried. It was the inhalation of an existence that had no boundary, the pull of a being that was not one, but all, not separate from space, but identical with it. Each wave of this breath stretched so far that it seemed unending, so slow that time itself appeared to dissolve into it. No beginning could be marked, no end expected. It simply continued, as though the universe itself exhaled, only to inhale again, in a cycle too vast for measure, too patient for change. The rhythm was the pulse of eternity, the heartbeat of stillness, the inhalation that gave rest to all things. In this great breath, the night became more intimate. Shadows thickened, but not harshly. They lay across the light like veils, softening its edges, folding the stars into a deeper calm. The galaxies floated like motes, suspended in air, drawn ever so slightly inward, yet not moving quickly, not disturbed, only drifting as if in agreement with the pull. The rhythm did not command them. It embraced them, and they leaned willingly into its current. The inhalation deepened, not in strength, but in patience. It resembled the drawing in of tidewater, smooth and wide, carrying with it both silence and sound, both light and shadow. It did not diminish what it touched but held. It preserved it, rested it within the lungs of infinity. In that inhalation, the cosmos was whole, not scattered or lost, but gathered gently into one vast unity, bound together by the breath that never ceased. To witness such breathing was to feel the quiet certainty of cycles, the reassurance that nothing ended but only folded into the next phase of rhythm. Just as day folds into night and night back into day, so did the universe fold into inhalation and exhalation, each one unhurried, each one infinite. There was no need for rush, no need for climax, no need for anything but the slow drawing inward that gave balance to the long exhale that would follow. And so the breath continued long and deep, pulling softly across the expanse, carrying stars, shadows, and silence together. The universe inhaled, and in that inhalation, there was no weight, no burden, only rest. It did not seek to finish, only to continue. And in continuing, it revealed the deepest truth of calm, that even infinity pauses to breathe. The long breath of the universe lingered, and as it stretched into stillness, the space around it opened wider, becoming less a void and more an embrace spread across infinity. The vastness did not press outward with force, but unfolded quietly, like arms extending without haste, circling all that drifted within. The darkness remained, yet it felt softer now, no longer distant or remote, but near like the fabric of night drawn gently around the edges of stars. The galaxies floated within this openness, not as fragments scattered, but as treasures held their faint light resting in the cradle of a boundless sky. In such a space there was no division between near and far, no boundary between silence and song, only the calm sensation of being held. The embrace was not marked by edges, for there were no edges to find. It was the openness of a horizon that cannot be reached, the endless spread of a sea that holds every ripple without effort. Each star, each cluster of light was contained not because it was confined, but because the space around it yielded surrounding, gently holding, without weight. In this openness, nothing was left adrift, nothing was lost. All was gathered within the curve of an unseen arm, a vastness that sheltered everything equally. The silence deepened within this embrace, and yet it did not feel empty. It carried warmth, as though the very act of being held gave comfort to the void. Light glowed faintly, and the shadows that stretched between glimmers did not threaten. They joined in the embrace, softening themselves to form part of the same rhythm. The galaxies did not resist the pull of such calm. They floated quietly, as though the openness itself guided them, as though their slow motion was simply another gesture of the arms that encircled them. Within this wide embrace, the breath of the cosmos continued long and steady. Each inhalation drew silence deeper, each exhalation spread calm farther, and together they wove the sensation of safety that stretched across distances too great to measure. The rhythm was so even that it became indistinguishable from stillness itself, and yet it moved with the patience of a tide that never retreats completely, a tide that always returns to cover the shore with calm. The openness was not only vast but tender. It did not hold to constrain, but to reassure, to remind that even in the endlessness of space, nothing floated alone. Every star had its place, every glimmer its space, every silence its purpose. The dark itself was not a wall, but a hand spreading endlessly to carry the weight of creation without strain. And in this carrying, the universe revealed its gentlest truth, that even infinity can feel like shelter. The embrace did not need to end, for it was not a gesture of time, but of being. It had no beginning that could be traced, no conclusion that could be marked, only a continuity that folded over itself endlessly. In that continuity, calm grew deeper, and in that calm light softened further. Shadow rested easier, silence settled more completely. The rhythm of breath continued, but now it seemed less like motion and more like presence, less like change and more like the natural state of all things. The vastness remained open wide and unbroken and yet intimate, surrounding each fragment as though it had always been meant to be held. The stars shimmered faintly within, not as points alone, but as part of a pattern too wide for vision, a pattern not drawn with lines, but with the steady reassurance of openness. The galaxies drifted, the silence lingered, and the arms of infinity continued to circle, without limit, patient, endless, tender. And so the universe rested in its own embrace, a vastness without edges, an openness without end, a cradle spread across eternity. It did not hold tightly, nor did it release. It simply remained like the horizon that always waits, like the sky that never closes, like the arms of night that fold around the world softly and without end. The embrace of space lingered, and within that endless openness, an older wisdom seemed to surface, as if the quiet itself remembered stories once whispered about balance and rest. In the old belief of distant lands, the world was seen not as chaos alone, nor as light alone, but as two rhythms breathing together, yin and yang, shadow and glow, silence and tone. They were not rivals, locked in struggle, but companions moving in cycles, leaning toward and away from each other, like waves rolling endlessly across a shore. Where one receded, the other returned. Where one grew soft, the other brightened, and in their alternation lay the harmony that kept existence steady. This balance was never fixed, never frozen. It pulsed with the patience of breath itself, drawing in and releasing, expanding and folding, a rhythm so natural that it could be felt even in the quiet of night. Yin was the rest, the pause. The shadow stretched long across the horizon. Yang was the brightness, the stir of movement, the warmth rising with the dawn. Together, they were not halves, but one whole, one breath inhaled and exhaled across eternity. The universe too seemed to echo this cycle. Its long inhalation filled the silence with calm. Its slow exhalation spread light into shadow, and in both directions the balance was kept. It did not favor one over the other, did not cling to brightness or shadow, but allowed both to flow naturally, as tides do, as seasons do, as lungs do, when no thought interrupts them. This balance was not something forced. It was simply the nature of being the pulse of all things alive. To rest in such a rhythm was to find peace, for within it there was no conflict, no need to hold fast, no need to resist. Shadow was not the end of light, and light was not the destruction of shadow. They were partners in an endless dance, circling each other, gently making room for each other, allowing the vastness to remain whole. The night carried within it the promise of day, and the day carried within it the return of night, each one leading softly into the other. In this way, the cosmos did not need to blaze forever, nor did it need to remain silent without end. It moved between its states, not hurried, not abrupt, but in a measured cycle that reflected the calm truth of yin and yang. The inhalation of stillness gave rest to light, and the exhalation of radiance gave form to shadow. Neither was lost, for both were parts of the same eternal breath. The harmony stretched outward, filling the galaxies, folding through the stars, seeping into the spaces where silence lingered. It was a reminder that rest was not absence, but necessity, that even infinity requires pause to remain whole. The universe, wide and unbroken, did not sustain itself through endless motion, but through the balance of movement and stillness, of brightness and dark, of sound and quiet. It continued because it rested, and it rested because it continued. The old wisdom saw this not as mystery, but as nature itself, a truth, as simple as the rhythm of lungs rising and falling. To breathe was to live, and to live was to balance. The cosmos in its great cycles reflected the same truth, reminding all that rest was not the opposite of life, but part of its unbroken flow. And so the space remained in equilibrium, wide and soft balanced between tones and silences, shadows and glimmers. It carried no tension, no sharp divide, only the endless motion of a breath too large to be measured, too gentle to be broken. Yin and yang continued to circle, two currents of one ocean, two notes of one song, two halves of a single breath that never ended. The quiet balance of shadow and light lingered, and from within that calm, the universe continued its song unbroken, as though silence itself had chosen to hum forever. The lullaby was not carried by instruments or voices, but by the gentle rhythm of existence itself. Every star glowed like a note stretched endlessly across time, every shadow folded like a pause between tones, and together they created a melody that asked for nothing more than to remain. The song did not begin with a flourish and did not lean toward an ending. It flowed like a river without source or mouth, a stream that only moved because motion was its nature. The hum of galaxies, the sigh of light, the stillness of night, all joined, weaving an atmosphere of sound too soft to disturb, too steady to fade. It was a song heard not with ears, but felt in the slow pulse of calm, sensed in the weightless drift of stars across an open sky. The tones spread far, but never pressed wide, but never heavy, like the faint shimmer of moonlight across still water, like the hush of wind through branches that hardly stir. To rest within this lullaby was not to listen, but to sink, to be carried, to allow the rhythm of the cosmos to rock all things in patience. The lullaby carried cycles within it, long and repeating. It did not rise, it did not fall, but it turned like the wheel of seasons, circling back upon itself endlessly. Each turn was familiar, yet never the same, each refrain steady, yet always new, like waves returning to the shore, with patterns so alike and yet unrepeatable. The universe seemed to lean into this repetition, allowing its breath to stretch endlessly, to rest within the motion that never ceased. The stars joined gently, not with brilliance, but with steadiness, their light resonating like chords drawn across a wide expanse. Darkness held them, carrying the melody forward, letting the rests become as important as the tones. In the spaces between, the lullaby deepened, softened, became fuller, reminding that silence was not absence, but a note stretched beyond hearing, part of the song that could not be set apart. This was no performance, no display, but the natural hum of existence moving in its own rhythm. The galaxies swayed within it, the stars drifted across it, the void itself carried it like an echo, too vast to fade. The lullaby had no conductor, no design, and yet its harmony was complete, balanced without effort, whole without end. It needed nothing added, nothing taken away, for its completeness lay in its continuity. As it lingered, the lullaby grew not louder, but deeper. It folded over itself, layer upon layer, until the song became indistinguishable from the space that carried it. Light and shadow both hummed silence, and tone both resonated, and together they formed a presence that cradled all things within its breadth. The universe did not push this song forward. It simply allowed it to remain eternal, patient, soft. The lullaby asked for no witness, and yet it held everything within it. Stars, galaxies, and even the spaces between were part of the melody, each one adding without effort, each one carried without weight. The music required no listener to be real. It was truth woven into silence, harmony dissolved into light song hidden within rest. And so the universe continued its lullaby, steady and unbroken circling, across eternity with no beginning and no end. It did not fade. As time passed, for time itself was only another note within its flow. It did not strain to remain, for remaining was simply its nature. It hummed like the breath of infinity, soft and endless, a song meant not to awaken, but to cradle, not to stir, but to soothe. The lullaby remained, and in its staying lay the quiet assurance that the cosmos would always sing softly, patiently, forever. The lullaby lingered in the stillness, and as it stretched onward, it revealed its shape, not a line with a start or an end, but a circle, turning quietly through infinity. The universe did not move forward like a path that must be walked. It folded into itself like rings upon water, each one spreading, fading, and returning unbroken. There were no edges to seek, no walls, to meet only the sense of roundness that carried all things back into themselves. The stars traced their arcs across the night, not to reach a final place, but to return again, their journeys measured not by distance, but by repetition, a slow rhythm of circles inscribed upon the dark. In this roundness, the cosmos seemed to breathe more deeply, as though its very structure was a cycle without boundary. Each motion leaned into this shape. The galaxies turned in spirals, their arms curving endlessly, never striking an edge, never needing to conclude. Their rotations did not lead outward into void, but folded inward into balance, repeating across ages with patience that could not be hurried. Even silence joined the circle, resting and returning, not as interruption, but as rhythm, a pause that belonged to the flow as much as sound itself. Everything moved, but nothing ended, for all was carried in the unbroken wheel of being. This circle was not sharp or rigid, but soft and unhurried. It resembled the motion of tides, rising and falling, seasons shifting and returning, night surrendering to day, and day yielding again to night. No line was drawn to divide them, no edge set to separate. One became the other, smoothly, endlessly, until the circle became less a path to follow than a truth to rest within. The cosmos was not a story written in straight lines, but a song sung in rounds, each refrain echoing the last, each echo blending seamlessly into the next. To drift in such a circle was to feel release, for there was no point to reach, no conclusion to fear, no ending to resist. The wheel turned quietly, carrying light into shadow, shadow into light, silence into sound, sound back into silence. The motion was not forced, but natural, not commanded, but simply present, as steady as the rising and falling of breath. The circle did not trap. It held it, soothed it, reminded that in eternity, nothing is lost, nothing is final, nothing is broken. The stars in their slow arcs mirrored this truth. Each rose lingered and set, yet each would rise again, carrying the same pattern across the sky with infinite patience. Their paths were not endings, but promises of return, not departures, but continuations. Their light too circled. It traveled outward, dissolved into distance, and returned in memory, shimmering faintly like echoes of a voice that never stopped singing. The darkness, vast and deep, was part of the same circle, a space not of absence, but of rest, the half of the rhythm that allowed brightness to return. The circle was not distant, not cold. It was tender like the curve of arms, closing around, like the soft line of the horizon, embracing sea and sky. To rest within it was to know there would be no fall, no void, only the assurance of return. In the circle, every pause led to continuation, every silence to another hum, every fading to another glow. The wheel of existence turned not with strain, but with ease, its roundness carrying everything as naturally as the moon carries its phases, as naturally as the earth carries its seasons. And so the universe remained in circles, without boundary, without edge, without end. Its lullaby did not travel away into silence, but curved back upon itself, again and again, forever. The music continued because it returned. The light endured because it cycled. The silence lived because it was part of the song. All was contained within the circle, a rhythm so complete that nothing needed to be added, nothing needed to be changed. The cosmos hummed within its wheel, endless, patient, serene, carrying all things in its round embrace, reminding that eternity is not a line stretching forward, but a circle turning softly forever. The circle continued to turn, and within that endless rhythm, all forms of being seemed to dissolve gently, not as a loss, but as a return, folding themselves into the motion that carried everything without pause. Existence did not resist. The turning for resistance required edges, and in the circle, there were none. Instead, each fragment leaned into the cycle light, softening into shadow, opening again, to light silence, stretching into tone, and tone retreating back into silence. It was not a cycle of struggle, but of ease, a rhythm as natural as the tide that folds back into the sea. The vastness did not distinguish between parts, for in the turning all was one, all was carried equally, all was drawn into the same slow embrace. To dissolve into such rhythm was to let go of separateness. Stars no longer stood apart as distant fires, but as glimmers woven into the same fabric, each shimmer part of the wheel, each glow bending with the same patience. Galaxies curved in spirals, not to expand endlessly, but to rest within the turn itself, their arms stretching outward, yet circling inward, their motion, both movement and stillness at once. Even silence became indistinguishable from tone, for both belonged to the same unbroken pattern, folded seamlessly into one another. The rhythm carried everything, not forward, not backward, but around like a wheel, turning without haste, like branches swaying in wind, too gentle to feel like a breath inhaled and exhaled so slowly that no difference could be marked between the two. Existence in surrendering to that rhythm was not diminished. It was fulfilled, completed by the certainty that there was nothing beyond the turning, nothing apart from it. To be was to flow within it. To exist was to be carried by it. The circle's embrace allowed every form to fade into continuity. Each light dissolved into the vastness, but in dissolving it remained transformed into the hum that filled the night. Each shadow expanded into silence, but in expansion, it became part of the same rhythm, no longer absence, but presence in another form. All that once seemed separate blended into harmony. The distinctions softened until they became invisible, until the only truth left was the unbroken turn. This turn was not hurried, not sharp, but smooth, wide, and unending. It resembled the slow rotation of seasons across the earth, the fading of twilight into night and night into dawn, the endless flow of rivers looping back into the ocean. The cycle carried the same tenderness as rest, the same reassurance as breath. There was no need to hold on, for everything was already contained, already carried, already part of the lull that spread without end. To imagine existence within this rhythm was to feel release, the weight of being, the strain of motion, the need for separation, all softened, dissolved into the turn that required nothing but presence. The stars turned, the galaxies turned, even silence itself turned, all within the same wheel, all within the same endless lullaby. The motion was not a task, not a command, but a natural unfolding, the quiet truth that everything belongs because everything is already part of the rhythm, and so, in that turning existence, became indistinguishable from the circle itself. To speak of stars or galaxies or silence was no longer to speak of separate things, but of facets of one rhythm, one lull stretched endlessly across eternity. The wheel did not end, and therefore nothing within it ended. The song did not cease, and therefore nothing within it was lost. Existence itself dissolved into the hum, the glow, the turn, the lull, soft, patient, unbroken. The universe did not stop singing. It simply allowed all that was to become part of its song to blend to rest, to dissolve into its infinite rhythm. And in that dissolution, everything remained carried forever within the circle that turned, without edge, without ending, without pause. And in the quiet rhythm that carried all things, another path seemed to open, not away from the circle, but as if extending it gently, like a ripple that continues long after the stone has vanished into water. Sleep was not an ending, but a continuation, a slow unfolding of the same current that guided galaxies and tides. It was a journey without departure, for nothing was left behind. It was a journey without destination, for nothing needed to be reached. Sleep moved, like the hush of dusk, flowing into night, where the boundaries between one and the other dissolved into something softer, something that did not separate, but embraced. The body lay still, but the mind drifted, carried into the wider rhythm, blending seamlessly with the cycle that stretched beyond the self. The passage into sleep felt like the universe drawing the listener into its own breath, a long exhale that released thought, a gentle inhale that carried silence in. There was no resistance, no weight, only the surrender of being part of something greater than form, greater than time. Like clouds dissolving into the vastness of sky, the self dissolved into the wide openness, not erased, but expanded, absorbed into the flow of the turning circle. The hum of existence continued, and within it, the sleeper became one more tone, one more thread woven into the lullaby. In this journey, the landscapes were not bound to the earth, but stretched into realms of quiet imagination. Dreams arose not as sharp visions, but as reflections upon still water, flickering softly before fading again into silence. Each dream was another step in the endless journey, carrying the sleeper deeper into calm, deeper into rest, deeper into the embrace of the universe that held everything equally. Dreams did not separate from waking. They continued the same unfolding, the same story spoken in a quieter voice. The rhythm of breath mirrored the rhythm of the cosmos, each inhalation a soft echo of expansion, each exhalation a reminder of return. To sleep within that rhythm was to feel aligned with the pulse of stars, with the drift of galaxies, with the turning of unseen wheels, that never ceased. The pulse was steady, slow, tender, a current that carried the sleeper without demand, without effort, simply by belonging to it. Nothing needed to be done, for sleep itself was already part of the cycle, part of the lull that extended through all existence. As sleep deepened, identity thinned like mist at dawn, becoming less distinct, less bound, until only the rhythm remained. The self was not lost, but dissolved into something wider, as if consciousness were a drop of rain merging into the ocean, carried yet whole, gone yet present, silent, yet part of the vast song. To sleep was not to vanish, but to return, to fall into the embrace of the cycle that had never let go. It was not a pause, but a continuation, not a retreat, but a homecoming. The journey of sleep stretched beyond measure, not marked by clocks or edges, but by the same turning that guided stars and seas. It was endless and gentle, weaving the sleeper through currents of silence and light through waves of shadow and glow, never harsh, never abrupt. It carried on like a lullaby that never needed to end, repeating not in monotony, but in reassurance, a whisper that the cycle was whole, unbroken, eternal. And in that whisper, rest was found, and rest was kept. The sleeper drifted, and in drifting became part of the wider unfolding, no longer separate from night, no longer separate from space, no longer apart from the song that hummed without ceasing. Sleep was not outside the rhythm. It was the rhythm itself, softened into another form, extended into another path. The journey continued not in steps, but in stillness, not in distance, but in depth. And so, sleep itself became the gentle path that stretched endlessly, carrying existence deeper into calm, deeper into silence, deeper into the turning lull that had no edge, no end, only the quiet embrace of continuation. And as the circle of silence continued to turn, another image drifted forward, ancient yet tender, carried like a whisper through time. The Egyptians once believed that the world itself was no more than the breath of Ra, the great sun god, exhaling all forms into life and drawing them back again with each inhale. It was not a violent act, not a command, but a rhythm as natural and inevitable as the tide returning to the shore. To them, existence was woven into this cosmic breathing, where every stone, river, and creature moved gently within the cycle of release and return. And just as a lullaby holds a child, that rhythm held all things, rocking them within the certainty of an endless pattern. The breath of Ra was imagined as a tide of light spilling across the land when he exhaled, filling the world with movement and form. When he inhaled, shadows gathered, and all that had been scattered was gathered again into the quiet of his being. Yet there was no fear in this return, only rest, only a pause that allowed the cycle to continue. In the softness of that belief, the world itself was understood as fragile and sacred, kept alive not by its own effort, but by the slow patience of divine breath. To fall asleep was to join this breathing, to be drawn into its calm, ebb and flow. The sleeper became like a reed swaying in the wind of that eternal inhale and exhale, rising with one motion, settling with the other, never separate from the larger tide. Dreams in that rhythm became the shimmering images left upon the air by the god's exhalation, fading like morning mist when he drew them back again. Each night the body surrendered to this current, and each morning it was returned renewed by the same breath that moved the heavens. Science now names cycles, expansion, and contraction, but even those words carry a softness when heard in the hush of night. Expansion can be imagined as light stretching outward, like dawn spilling across a horizon, while contraction can be felt as twilight folding gently over the earth, a drawing back that soothes instead of takes. These patterns echo the myth, not in doctrine, but in rhythm, showing that the human heart has always sensed the universe as something that breathes, something that sings quietly with every pulse. And to hear that song is to feel sleep approaching steady and inevitable as the deepening of dusk. The myth of Ra's breath was not only about the beginning and ending of worlds, but about the closeness of life to the rhythm that holds it. To see the world as a breath is to see it as fleeting, delicate, yet endlessly renewed. The Egyptians imagined that nothing was ever lost, only carried in and out of silence, like the waves of the Nile that rose and fell, leaving the land fertile again and again. And so, every creature was part of this great inhalation and exhalation, not forgotten, not abandoned, but forever woven into the breathing of the divine. For the listener, this becomes more than a story. It becomes a quiet reminder that rest is not absence, but part of the rhythm itself. Just as day yields to night, and night opens again into day, the act of lying down, of drifting into dreams, belongs to the same timeless movement. There is no rupture, no break, only the breath continuing, drawing one into silence, returning one into light, always repeating, always whole. The whisper of that rhythm, once imagined as the voice of Ra, still flows through the universe, still settles upon the ears of those who listen closely in the dark. And so, in the calm of this night, the world itself may be heard as breathing. Each star flickers as if on the edge of an exhalation. Each shadow gathers as if in preparation for an inhale. The sleeper rests within that pattern, drawn into its softness, carried by its patience. And in that breath, everything finds rest. Everything finds belonging. Everything is held as if in the palm of an eternal hand. The breath continues. It always has. It always will.